The monsoon of 2015 was no ordinary storm. It tore through Indonesia's Gunung Leuser National Park with an unforgiving rage, drowning ancient trees, turning solid ground into a treacherous swamp, and sending wildlife into a desperate fight for survival. For Ahmad, a veteran ranger who had spent decades protecting these lands, this was a nightmare unlike anything he had ever faced. The jungle, once a symphony of life, had fallen into an eerie silence, broken only by the relentless drum of rain and the distant cries of animals caught in the flood's grip. Then came the distress call. A family of Sumatran tigers, one of the rarest and most endangered species on Earth, was trapped. The rising waters had turned their den into a death trap. The male, Suria, was badly injured. His mate, Kamala, was fiercely guarding their 3 tiny cubs, who were shivering and helpless against the storm's fury. If help didn't arrive soon, they would all be swallowed by the flood. Ahmad didn't hesitate. The journey was treacherous. The wind howled like a wounded beast, and the rain pounded down in sheets, blinding his vision as he fought through the churning waters. Trees snapped like matchsticks under the storm's fury, their broken limbs drifting past like ghosts of the forest. By the time he reached the clearing, the water was waist-deep, and rising fast. Then, he saw them. Kamala stood her ground, golden eyes locked onto him with a mother's desperate ferocity. Suria, barely able to keep his head above water, let out a weak growl, a final, defiant act against the force of nature threatening to take him. The cubs huddled together, their tiny bodies trembling as the water lapped at their paws. One wrong move could turn this rescue into a deadly encounter. Ahmad took a slow, deliberate breath. He knew fear had no place here. If he showed weakness, Kamala would sense it. If he rushed, she would attack. Stripping off his rain-soaked coat, he let her see him clearly. He spoke in a low, calm voice, not words, but a steady rhythm meant to reassure. Slowly, he reached into his bag and placed a fresh cut of meat on the nearest patch of dry ground. Kamala's ears twitched. Her nose flared. She hesitated. Then, she stepped forward. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was enough. Ahmad seized the moment. With painstaking care, he edged the inflatable raft closer, his every movement precise. He scooped up 2 of the cubs first, laying them gently onto the raft where he had placed a dry blanket. The third hesitated, torn between its mother's warmth and the unknown safety of the stranger before it. Then Suria let out a low, guttural sound. A growl not of warning, but of surrender. Ahmad understood. With steady hands, he reached for the last cub just as a violent gust of wind slammed into them. The boat rocked. The cubs yelped. Kamala's body tensed, her muscles coiling as if ready to pounce. But then, she stopped. She wasn't seeing an intruder anymore. She was seeing a protector. Ahmad moved fast. With all the strength he had, he hoisted Suria onto the raft just as the floodwaters consumed the last patch of land beneath them. Kamala leaped aboard, her body instinctively curling around her cubs, shielding them from the cold and the storm. The fight wasn't over yet. The river of debris was relentless. Twisted branches, uprooted trees, and unseen dangers lurked beneath the surface. Every wave threatened to overturn their fragile sanctuary. Ahmad gritted his teeth, gripping the oars with white-knuckled determination as he fought against the current. Kamala pressed her cubs close, licking their soaked fur to keep them warm. Suria, weak but still a warrior, kept his eyes locked on the shifting waters, his instincts sharp despite his wounds. Then, through the mist and rain, Ahmad saw it. A patch of high ground. The moment they reached shore, Kamala sprang onto solid ground, shaking the water from her fur before turning back to check on her cubs. Suria tried to follow but collapsed, his injury too severe. Ahmad didn't think, he simply acted. Kneeling beside the wounded tiger, he worked quickly, his hands moving with the skill of years spent in the wild. He cleaned the wound, applied a thick bandage, and checked for signs of infection. Kamala stood close, ears perked, eyes unblinking. Watching. But she did not stop him. Minutes later, the sound of an engine cut through the stormy silence. The rescue team had arrived. Suria was lifted onto a secure stretcher, his massive frame still, but his eyes never leaving Kamala and the cubs. The family was taken to safety, dry land, food, medical care. For the first time since the storm began, there was peace. Days passed. The floodwaters receded. The jungle, though battered, began to heal. Suria's wound mended, leaving a scar, a permanent reminder of the battle he had survived. The cubs grew stronger, their playful growls a sign that the future was still theirs to claim. Then came the day they were ready to return to the wild. As the release gate opened, Kamala was the first to step forward. She scanned the dense forest ahead, every muscle in her body coiled with instinctual caution. But then, she did something extraordinary. She turned back. For a brief moment, her gaze met Ahmad's. Not with fear. Not with aggression. But with something else. Recognition. A silent thank you. Then, with a flick of her tail, she disappeared into the emerald shadows. Suria followed, his scarred leg moving steadily. The cubs bounded after them, their tiny bodies vanishing into the jungle's embrace. Ahmad watched until the last rustling leaf settled. A mixture of joy, nostalgia, and quiet triumph filled his chest. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a testament to the unbreakable bond between man and nature. A story that would forever be whispered in the leaves of the rainforest. And in the heart of the ranger who dared to save them. In life, there are moments of challenge that force us to face adversity, much like the brave park ranger paddling through the storm to rescue a tiger family. This image reminds us of the importance of responsibility, compassion, and resilience in the face of hardship. Life is not always calm, there will be times when we must make critical decisions, sometimes prioritizing the well-being of others over ourselves. Just as the ranger refuses to abandon the tigers despite the dangers, we, too, should be willing to help those in need, even when it is not easy. Additionally, the image of the hesitant tigers before boarding the rescue boat reflects a reality. The fear of change can cause us to hesitate and miss opportunities to escape difficulties. To overcome challenges, we must learn to trust, accept risks, and take the step forward. The greatest lesson from this story is courage, the courage to help, the courage to trust, and the courage to embrace change when necessary.